I think it needs to be a narrow focus. And I think also it's better to have just a small group, a small and effective, actionable and nimble group of people who you can who can feel accountable and take action and so on, right? It's rather than having a group of 1,000 members where there's 1% who's taking any actions at all. It's much better, of course, to have a group of, I don't know, 25 or 50 people where at least 50% are communicating on a regular basis, right? So,
true. Yeah. In the morning, I had an inspiring meeting with Melita.
Great.
So the first time I spoke to her, face to face, one to one.
Yeah.
And and I think number one is that in a certain respect, we have complementary services, because she's the business experience person, and she covers a little bit of mindset in her course.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I saw what you have to offer, and I think there is something you could build in there. It could be either by the way of a collaboration or whatsoever.
Yeah.
I just picked up the point last time she said something. She was talking about affirmations, and from a coaching perspective, affirmations are not the most helpful thing if you want to get anywhere in life.
Yeah.
But that's another story. And also, we had a very practical discussion, which might not be of interest for everybody around here, but for people who are in the, let's say, in the coaching consulting business, and who want to have, first of all, a booking system. Secondly, have the option of paid conversations and free conversations, and how to find a solution that integrates perfectly with the website and requires a minimum of administration.
Yeah.
So just look at the market. Perhaps we try to bring Umbra in, because she's the application engineer.
Yeah.
She knows what's available, and she understands what the client needs, and she's then the one who can say, well, you can find it there, or I have to find somebody in Nigeria to write the software for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, as we're using Zoom right now, of course, and we are definitely working at trying to fix our video conferencing opportunity within EntNest. But once that is set up, I think there is really huge opportunities of using EntNest for a lot of the different things that you want to do in terms of setting up a paid group and only having those people. You could have free elements and so on there. So yeah, it's and you're spot on in terms of finding people to collaborate with and presenting complementary elements. That's also what I think James, Melita, and Janine is doing there, right? So it's all about surrounding ourselves with great people where we can create mutual benefit. True. And then the rising tide lifts all the boats, as we've said, right? That goes for every situation almost.
I use that phrase on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
And apparently people were not familiar with it, but you could see the lights.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got one, maybe something that could be interesting for the future of pitching.
Yeah.
One of the ladies I brought to EntNest, so she signed up, but she has not yet finished her profile.
Okay.
Is Anya.
Okay.
And I met her many years ago in London when she was doing was involved in event management as a quite junior person. She is now a freelance moderator and TV host in Germany.
Okay.
And she has a program running in Germany about your media presence, and with Zoom, your Zoom presence. If you deliver something on Zoom, how do you do it? Even how you choose your dress, how you choose whatever you do, your breathing technique, your talking technique, all the things, all the technical things that could help a lot.
Excellent.
Also with pitching.
So we look forward to seeing her in having set up her profile.
I have only one explanation why she's not doing it. I think she's on holiday.
Yeah.
There's
all
so
right.
many people now.
James, I guess it's time. It's 2 minutes after the hour, right? So should we?
Yes.
I leave it to you, of course. This is your meeting, so.
Yeah, just quickly, Sophie, I don't know if you can hear us. If you could just indicate if you can, and if possible, come on video.
I wonder where all the others. There were so many people had signed up for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch that confirmed. I mean, yeah, there's.
This is, I think, a general issue in society and internet in total today, that people are signing up for things, and by that they are basically taking a seat, which then reduces the opportunity for anybody else potentially to go to that event if there's a limited seat. And it's really something I think we need to try and suggest some behavioral change in people, right? I mean, once you sign up for something, I think you really should be utilizing that opportunity. Yes, yes.
Exactly. Yeah, there's
Excellent.
a few people that want to be featured guests that said they'll come on. They're confirmed and
Yeah.
they haven't appeared yet. So
Yeah, they're coming soon, I'm sure. Hello, Astrid. How are you?
I'm well, sir. How are you? Nice to put face to name and name to face.
Yes, likewise. Very good.
hi, Astrid.
Hello, James. I'm very sorry I was late joining. I had to end another call.
Yeah, terrible. Right. Anyway, there's a lot. I don't know. There's a lot of background noise. So I mean, we're going to kick this off now, then, and then other people, I'll let them in as and when they come and request. Otherwise, we'll never get started. And yeah, it's their fault they're late, not our fault that we're on time. So right.
Exactly.
So if people, I mean, people will go on mute. So for the new people, Astrid, I mean, this is your first one, and Sophie also. So others, we're familiar with this, and we normally join 15 minutes early, and it's kind of the chit chat. So about anything, basically, we get to know people where they are, and it's great because we've got people here from all over the world. I mean, like Paul down in Cape Town, Pete in the US, Walter the UK, Johan Geneva, and you, Astrid, in the UK, and Sophie, I guess, I'm not sure where you are now, UK, I think. Anyway, so we'll go on mute, anyone that's not talking. Then Pete is the spotlight today, so it's all about Pete and him and his business. So we'll kick it off with learning a bit more about Pete, then we move into kind of the business, and then around 30 minutes, then we open it up to the audience, make it interactive. You can ask him questions, he can ask you questions, and then we just see the flow of it from then onwards. Okay, so without further ado, if you can, which you have, or muted yourself, thank you. So I'm recording this as well, Pete, so you also have a copy that you can plagiarize and do whatever.
Oh, awesome. Terrific. Thank you so much.
Right, Amber. Hi, Amber. So Amber's been on before, so she knows the format, and she was actually a guest speaker as well. So invaluable, because Amber actually teamed up with Julia, who was also a guest speaker. So just the networking bit alone is invaluable. And yeah, Pete does something great that I want to actually team up with Pete. So I mean, there's many things that we can do. Paul, I apologize, I still owe you a call. Right. But anyway, so without further ado, Pete, the floor is yours. So in your words, tell me a little bit about you, where you are. Are you originally from the US? And a bit about your background and something more personally, just so we can kick this off.
Sure. Well, good afternoon or good morning. I think mostly it's good afternoon to you. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's the largest city in the southeastern part of the United States, growing very rapidly. There's over 6 million people who live in the greater metropolitan area. So it's a quite large city. And the next largest cities in the US from us are probably New Orleans in Louisiana, or Miami in Florida, or let's say Washington, DC. So it's a large city, kind of central. It basically all the commerce for the Southeast comes to this place. I've lived in Atlanta since 1990, so 30 years. I came here after graduating from business school at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, which is one of the better public schools in the United States. I got recruited here from the Coca-Cola company, and that's what brought me to Atlanta, and I never left. But I'm originally from the Northeast. I'm originally from the Philadelphia area, which is in Pennsylvania in the United States. And I am I'll give some personal information. I'm one of 8 siblings. My parents were Italian-American immigrants, or my grandparents came over, Italian-Americans. We grew up, big families. And I'd like to say, yeah, there was too many kids, but I'm number 7. So if they would have stopped at 4 or 3, I wouldn't be here talking to you. So I have 4 children from my first marriage, and they range from I have identical twin daughters that are 21 years of age in the university, and then 2 older sons who are married. One has a little boy, so I'm recently a grandfather.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm because of COVID, I'm missing this little guy. His name is Sawyer. He's just what they say, he's just full of energies. Every time we do a FaceTime call, he's like moving around. I get different angles on him, but I never get him face straight up on the camera.
I can't believe you've got all of these kids. I mean, you look so young.
Well, I thank my mother for that. She lived to 99, died earlier this year, but it was a terrific life, and she had a good spirit about her and good genes. So yeah, I attribute most of that to her, and probably to my wife, Emily, who is a terrific wife and woman and professional. She works for the Coca-Cola company here in Atlanta. That's probably why we'll be tethered here until she no longer does that, but has been working for Coca-Cola for over 20 years now.
So you mentioned you got twins. I got twins as well, but
that's terrific.
They're not that old. I mean, mine are 4, a boy and a girl. So
I love
years to go.
And twins are great because they're like, you know, each other's playmates. So it made, after the first year, it got so much easier with them. And their personalities are very different. One of them is following my footsteps. I went to the United States Naval Academy and was a Navy pilot. And my daughter, Eleanor, is a rising junior, or call it second class at the U.S. Naval Academy. She went to a year of prep school. And her sister, Madeline, is a rising senior studying nursing in a small university in New Hampshire, in New England. So really cold winters, kind of probably like Sweden up there in New Hampshire. We're always joking because she'll call me in the dead of winter, and it's less than 0 degrees there. And it's, you know, it's probably, I've got short sleeves on down here. So that's good though. She's giving her life to help others, a life of service as a nurse, and I'm figuring in my older age that'll serve me well. So go for it, Madeline.
So talking about service and things, I mean, you actually come from the services.
Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit. I went to the United States Naval Academy. There is 3 primary service academies in the United States. The West Point, most people have heard of that first. It's a U.S. Military Academy in West Point, New York. I think that was founded in 1812. These are young schools compared to what you guys are used to. But the United States Naval Academy was founded in 1845. So we're coming up on a big year. And it's located in Annapolis, Maryland, which is very close to our national capital, Washington, D.C. It's about 30 miles east. It's on the Chesapeake Bay, so near water. Of course, it's the Naval Academy. And so after I graduated, I had the option of choosing 4 different kind of primary ways of serving, and I had a 5-year commitment with my graduation. So I could become a surface warfare officer, which means I would be on board a ship. I could serve on a submarine. I could go to the Marine Corps. So the United States Naval Academy graduates naval officers and Marine Corps officers, or I could be in aviation. And fortunately at the time, I didn't like any of those other 3, and I had good eyesight, so I chose aviation. which was definitely a fun way to go. So I did my flight training in Pensacola, Florida, which is in the western part of Florida, and what they call a panhandle. That was my primary training. And then I chose to go propellers, anti-submarine warfare. So we tracked submarines, mostly the former enemy. And I went to Corpus Christi, Texas to get my advanced training, and then I got my Navy wings, and then I chose to select West Coast operations. So I moved to California and lived there my first part of my military service, and then spent time in Okinawa, Japan, and in the Indian Ocean, 𝗬𝗢𝗪𝗏, which is part of the British Indian Ocean Territory, and flew all over the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, and had a lot of fun with that, and then became an instructor pilot in Jacksonville, Florida, and spent time instructing on the East Coast. And then after I left the Navy, I went into the reserves, and I spent a lot of time, 9 more years in the reserves, mostly flying in the Atlantic and into Europe, and spent some time in Rota, Spain, Sigonella, Sicily, Cornwall, Newquay in the UK, and a few other places. So
wow, so well traveled then. So,
I've seen a lot of things from about 10,000 feet.
all right, maybe it's the best way to see it. So then, how did you go kind of that transition from kind of the military background into? I mean, Coca-Cola was one of the biggest ones, and that's actually brought you to where you live now.
Yeah. So
how did you get, from that into something completely different?
It's funny. I get into these stories about my career and my vocation, and then something will pop up about my naval service, and they're like, "What else have you done?" But after I completed my military obligation, I decided that I did not want to become an airline pilot, which was mostly what most of my peers were doing. It was a nice segue, and they could go do that and have a pretty cush life. You work about 12 days a month, and most of them get second jobs. But for me, I was always thinking, okay, I got to do something with the gifts that God gave me. So that's when I chose to sign up to go to business school. And fortunately, I was able to get a fellowship at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And so went there. And then I was actually looking at potentially at investment banking. I had interviewed with Goldman Sachs when Coca-Cola came knocking, and you can't ignore Coca-Cola. It's too big. It's too dynamic. And one of the things that I mostly was attracted to Coca-Cola was the fact that it was a global company. Having spent my time in the Navy and having flown all over the world, I loved that aspect of what I had done. I loved engaging with different cultures and seeing different parts of the world. And so I knew if I went to Coca-Cola, that I would be able to continue to do that. I decided at business school that I would focus my attention on finance because I was good at math. I studied physics as an undergrad at the Naval Academy. And so I just put 1 and 1 together and said, okay, well, probably finance is the best vocation for me. And truth be told, I'm really glad I did, because it really gave me a tremendous basis of knowledge about how business works and about how profit and loss works and balance sheets and that sort of thing. And so I spent the first 5 years at Coca-Cola in the finance department, the first 2 doing financial analysis for Coke's European group. So I actually got to interact a lot with most of the countries in Europe and look at their P&L. And then I was offered the opportunity to jump into Coca-Cola's treasury department. And Coke doesn't need money, but we borrowed anyway, just because we could, and we did it cheap. So one of the cool things I got to do was borrow money at 100 years, which many, very, very few companies get to do. I think our chief financial officer just wanted to say he could do it. And so we ended up borrowing money for 100 years at just slightly over the 30-year treasury note, which when you think about it is, okay, the US borrows money for 30 years at a rate, and we were borrowing for 3 times that, and we barely paid any more. I think we paid like 35 basis points more than the US Treasury. So that was kind of a cool thing. And then an opportunity came up where we had cash operations in London, England. And the person that was running that little satellite office had been hired by Citibank, which was Coca-Cola's cash bank. And so they needed a stopgap, and they offered me the chance to take my wife and my 2 boys at the time and live a year in London, which was fabulous. So I spent half of 1 year and the other part of the other. This was in the mid 90s in London, and absolutely loved it and fell in love with the UK. And fortunately from there, got to travel to a number of different cities in the
Where did you live in London?
So that would have been June of 1994 to July of 1995.
All right. And whereabouts?
So I lived in 𝗪𝗚𝗡𝗏, near Little Italy, Little Venice, they call it. Do you live there, Astrid? I love 𝗪𝗚𝗡𝗏. Too expensive. Yes, I know. I remember. It was funny because most of the expats lived in, I want to say, Kissich or something like that. It was a suburb. And so, so they asked me, you know, don't you want to go live there? And I said, why would I want to live there? I want to live in the city. And they were like, well, all the expats live there. And I said, well, okay, that's the reason why I don't want to live there. So I love being in this really cool little part. And of course I was on Coke's dime. They had to pay for all my expenses. So I chose this little area. We were on an in terrace, so it was a cute little place. They gave me a car, and I learned how to drive on the left side of the road, which was fun and challenging. And then one of the other things I did was I stayed in the reserves, and they wanted, initially I was supposed to stay in the US reserves, but these guys were meeting on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings doing really nothing, reading the paper mostly. And I said, this is going to drive me crazy. So I applied and asked if I could serve with the Royal Auxiliary Air Force, and got an opportunity to do that. So I served with the Royal Auxiliary Air Force in Northolt in London. And so got to hang out with my fellow British Reserve officers. And what I loved about that was we'd serve on Thursday night, and at 9 p.m. after the service was over, they'd open up the bar and we'd all have a pint of beer, which we never did that in U.S. Services. So I thought, well, this is pretty cool. So I had absolutely fantastic time that year in London and traveling all over Europe. And then when I came back, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's kind of a short period really, because there's so much to do and see. I lived in London for many years, but I like to think I lived in Chelsea, but I didn't. I lived in Bow in the East End, and yeah, it was great fun. But I mean, you would go into work and you wouldn't go back home to go out again because it was too much of a commute. So you would end up staying in the city, and then there was always something to do, always like, or go to shows. I mean, I'd never seen so many shows before, because you can get special offers on shows and you just like, all of a sudden, yeah, I'm going to go to a show tonight, and so on. So it's a great city to live, but particularly when you don't have kids. I mean, for me, it was even better then. But yeah, carry on with your story. I mean, maybe we passed each other in the city.
We might have.
Never knew.
You hit the nail on the head. I was so frustrated that I had to leave so fast. Originally, when I signed up, they said, well, it was going to be 18 months, and then they cut it down to 13. And still, I was trying to find a way to stay there, and unfortunately, that didn't work. They actually, in kind of towards the end of the assignment, they asked if I wanted to interview for a job as a finance manager or budget manager for the Italian division. And I was starting to realize that I really didn't like finance so much, but I was, with the opportunity to go to Italy, I certainly didn't want to miss it. And I interviewed for the job, and then ultimately said, you know, our business is not so good right now. So even though we'd love to have you, we don't want to bring you here and then have to lay you off. So that didn't happen. And when that occurred, I said, okay, this is my opportunity to jump ship from finance into marketing. And that's when I asked permission and interviewed, and ultimately ended up interviewing for a job as basically as a negotiator for Coca-Cola sponsorship. So I came back to Atlanta, and I started negotiating on behalf of the National Hockey League for Coca-Cola, the Major League Baseball, NASCAR, which is a big racing platform here in the United States. And then that happened to be 1996, and there was this little event called the Olympics going on in Atlanta, and Coca-Cola's home city. So I got pulled into a lot of that. And Coca-Cola, this is crazy, but they spent $30 million building a temporary 100-day kind of a theme park. They called it Coca-Cola Olympic City. It was a chance for fans to come experience the Olympics who didn't have a ticket. So you could come into that theme park, and there was a old technology, right? But they had this athlete, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, who was a US sprinter, and you could run alongside her and see how fast you were compared to her, which was fascinating for all us guys who got crashed. I mean, like she was so fast, and do all kinds of things like that. And so that was fun. And during that period, Coca-Cola was selling Coca-Cola Atlanta Olympic merchandise in this theme park. And that's when I met a woman named Lorianne Goldman, who was heading up a group called Worldwide Licensing. And she offered me the chance to come join her group to head up a group called Event Merchandising, where I would continue that legacy and creating co-branded programs with Coca-Cola and our major sponsored programs. And so immediately from there, I went to work on the Nagano Olympic Games and also on France 1998 FIFA World Cup and on NASCAR programs. And so so it was fabulous. I was all over the world, literally working any hour of the day, because it was always, the sun was always shining in one of those locations. I had a gentleman help me on the Nagano Olympics, and I had a lady helping me on France 98 World Cup, and then another one helping me on NASCAR. And so we were managing these three programs, and we started with nothing in 1997. And by the end of 1998, we had sold collectively about $50 million worth of Coca-Cola, and insert the name of the other entity merchandise. And
congratulations.
It was,
and you got to go to lots of sporting events.
Lots of sporting events, and that I never got back to another FIFA World Cup, which is really disappointing. But I've worked on in some capacity or another, mostly with Coca-Cola, but with other entities as well, 8 different Olympic Games. So that's one of the neat things that I've gotten to do. I worked on Nagano. I worked on, I didn't get to work on Sydney, but I worked on Salt Lake. I worked a little bit on Torino. I worked on Vancouver and Sochi, and on Athens. I worked on the 2004 Global Olympic Torch Relay. Samsung was our client, and so I spent 35 days traveling around the world, starting in Sydney, Australia, and went to every continent except Antarctica, 33 or 34 cities in 27 countries in 35 days, which was insane.
I mean, this is fantastic, particularly from kind of a military background to come doing something completely different, and then kind of get that found in with kind of the financial side of your, I mean, the knowledge that you had, and then moving into something more branding and promoting the things. So then, how did you then get into your current business? And tell me a bit more about that, because I mean, that is really, we want to focus now on what you're doing now and how you transitioned into that and kind of what led you to that.
I will immediately do that. I have to just emphasize the one point you just made, James, which was I went from this military background to this crazy opportunity. Yeah. And it was surreal for me, literally surreal, when I was in Beijing with the Olympic Torch Relay, and I'm waving a Chinese flag in Tiananmen Square. And if I would have thought 15 years before that, I would anywhere do anything as crazy as that, I would have just said, there's no way in God's green earth that could happen. But here I was.
A tank, wouldn't there? There'd be a tank there in front of you.
Exactly. I mean, I literally flew my aircraft off the coast of China many times. So it was just really weird, but a wonderful experience. So after the Olympic torch relay, I got recruited to the Newell Rubbermaid company. It's now called Newell Brands. It is about a $7 or $8 billion multinational company with a number of brands that you may have heard of, like, for example, Waterman pens is in there, Sharpie pens are in there. It also had the Rubbermaid brand, and it's not a very popular brand in Europe, although there is some presence there, but it was a very, very important brand in the United States. In fact, in 1994, it was America's most admired brand. So it was one of the key brands that Newell Rubbermaid had. I was hired to come in and run their global licensing business. And at that time, there was about a little over $100 million worth of licensed merchandise. And so what does that mean? That means about 20 different companies were making products branded with Rubbermaid on them, where they were responsible for making the product, building the brand, Rubbermaid brand into it. We would approve those products to make sure that they were brand aligned. Then they would market those products and sell them. And primarily they were doing that in North America. And that was the United States and Canada, although we had some exposure in Korea and maybe a couple other countries. And so I really honed my licensing skills from Coca-Cola days, which was mostly about marketing, right? So we were creating mementos, right? We would create pin sets and plush and t-shirts and caps. Now we were creating, line products, closet accessories, garage accessories, things for the garden, and all these kinds of products. And so really helping us, I would say, fill out our universe, our brand universe, because Rubbermaid was really good at creating things that were made of rubber or plastic, but they weren't really good at any of the other stuff. And that's where we brought these other companies in to help us do that. Fortunately for me, I did well and got promoted out of that group to run a small multinational business called CardScan, which was a way to scan your business card to take all that analog information and populate it into a database, which made it digital, and you could do a lot of things with that. This was in 2008, and so started running that business out of Boston. I lived in Boston for a year, and sadly, that was when the 2008 recession hit, and unfortunately, that company got basically rolled under another company, and I got to lay off 40 people, including myself. And so here I am at the beginning of 2009 saying, okay, what am I going to do? We're starting a global recession. I'm a white male, middle age. There's not too many people hiring anybody, let alone folks like me. And at that point, I had done really well at Coca-Cola and gotten promoted and then laid off. And the same thing had happened at Newell Rubbermaid. And so I said, maybe it's my opportunity now to seize the moment and start my own company with the mindset of really helping brand owners, brand stewards, business owners learn what this whole thing of brand expansion, brand extension, and licensing is all about. And so I use this as an opportunity to launch my company, primarily consulting, helping businesses understand what I'd say was the power of brand licensing, but also to start to educate them on, how do you go from brand strategy to brand expansion, extension, and licensing. And fortunately, right after I started my company in 2009, Coca-Cola came knocking again and say, hey, will you help us with the Vancouver Olympic Games? You've done this before. And so they were my first client, which was a great way to start.
Very good.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. And one of the things I said was, I'll come cheaper than somebody else perhaps, but I want to be able to tell the world that you are my client, and they agreed to do that. And so we put on a program there in Vancouver, which was very successful considering all the timelines. They basically called me about 9 months out. I'd said, if we would have done this a year earlier, I could have done 10 times as many sales, but it is what it is, and we did well with it. And so that kicked it off. And I've been working this company and enjoying it for 11 years now. I have, my whole mindset has always been about how do I really raise the bar on helping brand stewards understand how to expand their brands. And so I started writing guidebooks. In fact, this is an old version of this. I'm working with a team right now on trying to take this forward. But this is a 300-page guidebook on how to create a best-in-class built-to-last brand licensing program. And so from here, I took this 300-page PowerPoint and created a PDF book called Breakthrough Licensing, which is both two versions, one for brand owners and one for manufacturers, how to put this program together. And so
is this the book that you've got on released on Amazon?
No, so
there's something else.
So there are, I'll call this the book I just mentioned, this Breakthrough Licensing. I'll call those guidebooks. There's about 10 of them. But what I wanted to do, and I knew that right out the gate I was not going to be able to do it because I just wasn't a sophisticated enough writer. I wanted to hone my writing skills, but I knew that there was a desperate need for a book out there that could, I would say, cover the gap or the chasm between brand strategy and brand licensing. Because nobody really understood in all my experience what was the principles around brand expansion. Why do you expand? How can you expand? What is the importance and benefit of expanding? And what are the different ways of doing that? So about 5 years into my consultancy, I decided I was going to write that book. And I went to a couple of book writing courses in New York and met with a number of best-selling authors and learned the basis of how to write a book. So all of those principles, and then started writing this book, which ultimately I titled Expand, Grow, Thrive. And it looked at the genesis, the need for brand expansion, which was around growth, and then the principles of why brands should expand. I coined a phrase with a gentleman, he and I teamed up, a brand strategist out of Wellington, New Zealand. His name is 𝗪𝗘𝗫𝗪. And we co-created this model called LASSO, and we coined this phrase called the brand expansion point. So the brand expansion point, we say, is that point, either a physical point or an emotional point at which a brand can expand. So if we think of an emotional point, like Coca-Cola brings warmth and happiness and warm memories to your life, then the expansion point for all the categories that the brand should go into are around that principle. And so if you think of a category that reinforces that principle, then it's probably a category that Coca-Cola should go into. Now, it may not have a market there yet, but that's the favorable category, as opposed to another category that might not be good for it, even though somebody might buy the product.
Oh, who's that?
That's my dog. Just a second. Let's see if I can calm her down.
She's congratulating you. If it's not a dog, it's a kid. I've had my kid knocking on the door, screaming to come in.
She sees somebody outside and she gets nervous. So I apologize for that. Hopefully she won't be too disruptive. So that was the brand expansion point. And then the model stands for lateral. So from category to category, addictive, storied, scalable, and ownable. And so we say these are the 5 elements from which to think about a brand and whether or not it has the opportunity to expand. And then we created an algorithm to be able to measure whether or not your brand is under expanded, slightly under, optimally expanded, slightly over, or over expanded. So there is actually brands that are in categories they shouldn't be, they're over expanded. And there's plenty of brands that have these great opportunities to grow into new categories that are under expanded. And knowing how to go into those categories and the way to do it is essential. And so that's what this book is about. And then once I get through that model, then we talk about, okay, what are the different ways of doing that? And that could be you actually make the product yourself and you market and sell it, or you source the product from somebody else who builds your attributes into it and then you market and sell it. That's kind of mostly internal, or it's external. You buy a company that makes this product and you build your brand attributes into it and you build them into your organization, or ultimately you license your brand to a company who's as good at what they do as you are at what you do, and then you let them market and sell it into your own region, or maybe they expand into a different region.
Okay, so we're kind of getting up to that halfway mark that I want the audience to also interact and ask you questions. But I mean, I have a bunch of questions, and there's a ton of stuff that we've already discussed that I know a lot more than kind of the audience. And I mean, you also talk about you're a TEDx speaker as well, and you've done many other things. I want to also understand. I mean, although you started off with Coca-Cola, and that's a fantastic kind of reference to have. Are they the typical size companies that you work with, or do you work with? I mean, who do you see as your client avatar, or the typical clients that you do business with now?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you for asking it. I decided about 3 years ago, and I'd been thinking about this for a long time, and it just came to fruition, that I really want to represent the overcomer. So I want to represent this is the entrepreneur who's trying to take their brand to the next level. This is the person who is in an organization. It might be a large organization or a mid-sized organization who wants to hone their skills so that they can be best in class. This might be actually a student who wants to learn about this subject so that they can go become a professional in the industry. But if I had a sweet spot, I would say it's around the folks in and around this room, right? Because the entrepreneurs are the ones that I align with the most, and I'm so excited about helping, because I believe in you guys. I am one of you, and I want to help you take it to the next level. So that might be building your brand, or it might be actually licensing someone else's brand to build your business. And so that's my target audience.
Okay, because there's so much to do with branding. I mean, we talked about it earlier, but I mean, you can have company branding, product branding, personal branding, and it kind of goes on, and it's kind of a minefield of, well, where do you focus and where do you start? And what's your budget on this, and how you're going to brand, and where you're going to brand it. And it's quite a specialized area, because I have no idea in that. I know kind of what I need, but I don't know where to start. So, and I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly here, that would like to leverage on that, but maybe they have no idea where to start either. So that'd be great. Now, I'm not going to ask all the questions, because the whole idea is we want to make it interactive. So people can come off mute now. And I mean, I haven't asked maybe some of the obvious questions. So it's both up to Pete. Also, if you want to ask your audience something, I mean, is branding something significant and something that you need in your business, and what you do about it at the moment, if anything? And maybe for people in the audience then to ask Pete any questions more about what he does, what he offers, how he does it, because he's based in the US, can he do it remotely, and whatever. So audience is up to you.
And I'm looking forward to absolutely answering all your questions. One of the questions I would ask you is, do you think branding is important to you, what you do in your business and your success?
I mean, for me, absolutely. I mean, I talk about, visibility impact, kind of my name. And the reason why that came about is I was at many events and many entrepreneurial groups. And I thought the biggest problem is we're in groups, but we have zero visibility. And then once you get visibility, you need to make an impact with it. But it's easier said than done. How do you actually do that? So I'd say that even me that's actually trying to promote that visibility, I need to brand what is behind my brand and what do I do with it. So that's kind of mine. I mean, other people?
I think that's really interesting, actually, James, because you have opted for a branding which is not eponymous. You know, you're not mentioned in it. I had I have unfortunate initials, so all the initials that I tried to play around with to hide my identity when I registered my business had already been registered. So as a result, I ended up having an eponymous brand, and that puts a huge pressure. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like I'm going to do something nefarious or in crudely bad taste, but it is something about the branding model and the branding pressure, which I'm now finding particularly interesting. And Pete, I would be really interested in your comments on this, because I am looking to franchise one of my products. It is a particular project where I'm looking for other people to take this into a different geographic area using my brand. Mm-hmm. And for me, part of me is just going, yeah, brilliant. And part of me is going, no, don't. And it's that tension about the personal branding and the product, and then that brand expansion piece that your kind of gap sweet spot is absolutely where I am. So all advice.
Oh, sure, Astrid. That sounds like really exciting. Congratulations on that. And it's scary too, right? Because that's
Yeah.
your baby. But I would say, you know, the most important thing for me in this area is, you know, what does the expansion offer you, right? And how do you make sure that you do it the right way? And literally, I'm coaching and consulting with a client, another one of us, right, an overcomer who is a marketing agency who's now gone into co-working space, and they created a co-working space right with their company because they had some extra space. They branded it a different name. And then they were saying, okay, well, we want to increase our footprint because we believe the co-working space will drive our core business, which is the marketing space. And the first question they asked was, can we do this via licensing versus franchising? Because we really would rather get away from the franchising, all the hurdles associated with that. So we had this long conversation about, well, what is it you're trying to promote? And is it required or is it essential that this co-working company do everything exactly the way you're doing it? Or is it just okay if they just protect your brand and treat the brand properly and then run the business as they see fit? And they said, no, more the latter than the former. And so now we're going down a licensing opportunity for them. And hopefully this will be one of many. And so literally waiting for the contract to come back from the attorney, and then we'll get the deal done and they'll be off to the races. So we should absolutely talk about what you're trying to do. And I would love to chat with you. I get so much fun, enjoyment out of working with you know, entrepreneurs like you. So it would be a pleasure.
Yeah, no, that would be useful. Thank you.
So I've seen that Paul and Johan and Walter have come off mute. So did you have questions also?
I can shoot from South Africa. I have a very quick question. We run this little, what they call a business accelerator or an incubator. So it's co-working space and all this kind of stuff. But it's technically an international expansion opportunity. So we take companies that we think could expand internationally. Could they export their product, or could they bring in a technology into their system that improves them? But one key area, so they're from a range. I mean, we're talking from spice companies to oil companies to spice, oil, drinks, wine. So it's a broad range. And one of the things we were trying to get right, that we didn't get right, but we were trying to get right, was that, and Johan, you can maybe come in here, but you know, because people belong to a chamber, for instance, in our country, we're looking at ways of making that belonging to the chamber, that brand. So the chamber's got a strong 200-year-old brand. Can we use that to help all of our 2,000 clients that are different all over the place? But it's that you know, Intel inside. I think that's good. That's kind of like, so we want to say, you know, because you're a member of the chamber, you're a better company.
Yeah, the word that comes to me is an endorsement brand, right? You want them to endorse effectively. If you associate the chamber brand with each of the companies, and maybe there's a you know, a component, whether it's on the website or on a product or on a service line, you use that endorsement brand of the chamber. That could be a very powerful way of doing that. In the US, the American Heart Association puts its seal of approval, let's call it, on different products so that consumers know that they've given them the okay, that this product will help you with your health. And if it doesn't have it, then you know, okay, maybe that product is not as good for me. So there's definitely an opportunity there. What you were referring to with Intel Inside, it's very similar. It's called an ingredient brand, and that can be a very powerful lure as well. But typically the ingredient is part of the total, whereas I see the chamber as maybe being more of an endorser. But it's a nuance. But in either way, it's very beneficial.
We've gone down the endorser route before, but that doesn't. There's a danger there, because if you endorse every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's a member, and then suddenly one of your members now robs the VBS bank, you've got an overall problem with your whoever you endorsed.
For sure. So you have to be very discerning, right?
Yeah, discerning,
American
yeah.
Heart Association is very discerning with who they choose. And so you could call it, you know, endorsement brand, or, you know, in the case of the American Heart Association, the seal of approval program. It could be something like that. But then they have to be able to say, I'm not going to select this company or that company for these reasons. Or if you do things that are not aligned with our brand, then we will take back our endorsement.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
basically what you're saying is you've got to have some rules.
Oh, 100%, right? Think about when you expand your own brand, you're going to make sure that the company, remember I talked about the categories and the categories being right. And then within that, once you sign your deal, there's all these provisions, these, I'll call them clawbacks, right? If they don't do a certain thing, you get to take away some of their privileges, and ultimately you get to terminate the agreement if they misbehave.
Okay.
Excellent. Walter,
Let's
did you
talk
have
more, Paul.
One quick follow-up there. I've got an excellent contact, goes back 20 years, who also lives in Atlanta. And I think, Johan, they would also be good. They would also be good for Entnet. They do the same thing as me. They're friends, and they Atlanta based. I don't know if you know them. They're Market Access International.
I don't know it, but I would love to meet them.
I will send you details, and maybe you can follow up on your side. And
Of course, yeah, that would be a pleasure.
See, that's the value of having these calls, you see.
Yeah, who would
It's
have
all
thought?
about
Right?
networking.
Yeah.
So, Walter, did you have a question? I see you're off mute.
Yeah, you see, when I started my business, there was a question: do I started as Walter Esser, or do I started with a different name? And I don't know. It was more gut feeling that led me to the decision to start it under a name which has some connotations to the world of soft skills, emotional intelligence, and coaching. The more I think about it, and especially since I was in one of your workshops, I think one last week or 2 weeks
The
ago,
webinar, yeah,
a webinar.
on addictive maybe.
I was thinking, okay, what are the emotions and the stories that people, that you connect with a brand? And I think most important for working as a coach of any color, of if life or business or leadership, whatever, is the element of trust, and it's the element of confidence, and the element of what should I say, of authority. So so I think also with the fact that being open to open up for people who work with me, let's say under the same name, or even to license something out. I think I'll make the right decision to go for a company name rather than a personal name. But what's your take on that?
It's an absolutely excellent question. I literally gave a presentation yesterday on personal branding for entrepreneurs, and this was to that group of Service Academy veterans, because I said, it's essential that you are the face of your company, right? So in my case, recently I did this DBA. I'm doing business now as Brand Alive, but my website is 𝗘𝗢𝗨𝗥.com, and I am the face of my company. And one of the things that I want to do, Walter, is create a certification program and train the trainer to teach others to do what I do. And of course, if I do that, like you want to do or are doing, then it's critical that these individuals meet those standards, right? So it's going to be a rigorous platform. I'm thinking like 4 levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, and then like master level. And so they're going to have to pass certain thresholds. But I know that if we work together, that's totally achievable. And then that allows me to expand Brand Alive further and further, and allows me to provide, serve my purpose and my mission better. And if they don't do what they say they've agreed to do, I'm going to take back my certification, I'm going to take back my brand, just like we were talking with Paul just a second ago. So I think there's some similarities between what you want to do and what I'm doing, and we should certainly talk more about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Excellent. So there's tons and tons of things I want to ask as well. And I think, Pete, what you do also, I've seen, I mean, you do some events as well, and people are more than welcome to join those. So for me, it seems to clash with the kids, like dinner time. So a bit more challenging for me, but I mean, I definitely want to catch up with Pete anyway and see what we can do together. But also maybe tell us a bit more about kind of how do you offer this? I mean, is it online? Is it through a different program, workshops, or maybe explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I'll just speak to the event that James is talking about. I started a webinar series in April. I thought with COVID-19 and all of us cooped up and now having to use Zoom and NES hopefully soon and other platforms, this was a chance to give back and to engage. And so every other Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which allows it to be the end of the day in Europe and early in the morning on the West Coast of the United States. So we're getting most of the world, but unfortunately not the Pacific Rim. We give this, I'm giving a 1 hour lecture on, and I'm literally going through my book, Expand, Grow, Thrive right now. And then all of those are recorded and they're all put on my YouTube channel. So easy to get access to that information. But to kind of get a more holistic answer to your question, James, what we're doing and what we offer is we start out at the very highest level with kind of like, you can get access to my knowledge through the books that I've written. And they're relatively inexpensive. We're talking about probably somewhere between 10 euros and 40 euros, or $10 and $40 a book, depending on the scope of it. The next thing down is, the opportunity to engage with me to speak, and I could do that for a group of individuals at a nominal fee, or to a company for a flat fee, or to do workshops and go through and everything from how to think about your brand expansion point, to how to measure your brand on the Lasso model, to how do you think about creating a brand licensing program. So all of that is kind of the next level. One of the things I'm going to create and haven't done it yet is this Brand Alive Academy, where we're going to teach people how to be brand expansion and extension and licensing experts. That's coming in the next year. And then ultimately to engage with me directly in a consulting forum. So those are all the different ways that you can engage with my company. And like I said, you're my target audience. I really get a lot of joy and fulfillment out of helping you succeed.
Excellent. So we've just had some notes about finding you. So you've got your own personal profile and you've also got your venture profile. So people can find you on either. And also if you look at events, you'll see the events listed, and then you can scroll back through and see which ones are there. And anyone in particular, I guess, if you've got an interest, then Pete can, I guess you can invite people directly. So, I mean, like people on this call that they're interested on your event, you can invite them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I want to invite and become connected to as many folks as possible who see value in what I'm doing, right? I only want to take up your time if you think you can get something beneficial from our relationship. And if you want to learn more about me and my company, it's literally 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥, as you can see on the screen.com. And that's where you'll get all the details of, our purpose and our ethos and all the things that we do. So lots of good information there for those who want to know more. And you can learn all about, you can see some pictures of me when I was a young naval officer back in the Indian Ocean. So I reserve that for only those who are really desperate to sleep.
So, I mean, I'd like to discuss with you also, I mean, personal branding, because I've kind of created kind of the company branding, but because I am the company, then people need to know who it is behind the name. So I never like to call it like James Moffat kind of business. But I mean, it depends on the business. I mean, I know people that use their name. I mean, I didn't want to do that, but then I think, well, people need to know my name. So there's kind of that discussion I need to have. So yeah,
we should. And if it makes sense at some point, I'd love to share that presentation I gave yesterday to these other folks on personal branding, because I think there's some basics there that can help everyone. One example, I say that everything communicates. So you're communicating whether you know it or not. Either you're being thoughtful and proactive about your communication, or you're being passive and you're communicating something you probably don't even intend to communicate, but you're just not doing it intentionally. And that could be detrimental to your business, because the brand is you, right? So if you're doing something that's inappropriate, it's going to hurt your brand and it's going to hurt your company.
Exactly. So Martin, are you just about to go? Because Martin brands himself, and I like his brand, and so he's a good example.
Thank you, James. But this personal branding thing, I battled with it too. I have a company name, and I have training that I do under different names, but I also have my own. But I ran into trouble because despite my name being slightly unusual, there is, to my knowledge, one other Martin 𝗘𝗔𝗞𝗍 who turns out to be a extreme right-wing misogynistic politician wannabe, and he doesn't get very good press, and sometimes I get his mail. It's not nice.
That is crazy.
So, you know, I often have to differentiate myself by saying, I'm not that Martin 𝗘𝗘𝗏.
Yeah, I mean, likewise with my name. This is James Moffat, and he's I think he's an Australian kind of rally driver or something, and quite famous. And then so I checked it out, and it kept coming up his name and rather than mine. So I kind of need to jump to the top spot. But I mean,
I have the same situation for me. My name likewise was an ex-Swedish professional hockey player. So that's a good one to have, though.
Yeah, I guess I'm fortunate. Canalichio is unique enough that I've not had to deal with this, but I can see where it could be a problem.
Yeah.
So Sophie, I think you want to answer that.
Yes, I just wanted to ask. I'm just entering the stage of trying to get visibility out there for my business, and I have no funds to spend on Facebook ad or to add to Mark Zuckerberg's lovely fashion. So what would be your advice for somebody to get visibility, your brand out there?
So one of the things that I'm doing, Sophie, is I've actually brought in an intern and I did a really thorough interview process. I went to one of the local universities' business schools, and ultimately 17 individuals raised their hand, and they all were bright and intelligent. And I went through a 3-stage process where I kind of assessed them, and then I asked them to do as level 2. So I went from 17 to 10. And they had to complete like an assignment, and I evaluated the assignment. And then we went to a 3rd stage where there was 2 finalists, and I chose the one. And so everything that you will see that I'm developing and putting out there is from my intern. Her name is 𝗪𝗪𝗪, and she's so smart and so engaging. And so she can take everything I'm doing and then create the digital presence that I'm looking for. And so it is extremely reasonable. You know, I pay her something, but not nearly as much as I would have normally, because she's studying for her degree. And that gives me the ability to get my presence out there and tell my story at a very reasonable economic price. So that is a method I would recommend, because you could do it yourself, but unless you're good at these sorts of things, that's probably not going to be the best thing to do. And also, let's say you are good at it, it's going to take away from you doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? The high value things. So the opportunity cost may be too expensive. So that's a suggestion that I would ask you to consider.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because I'm not good at that side of things. I'm good at creating things, and I'm good at, what my expertise is in. because I put out a challenge that I thought was great. It has great content, it has great graphics and a lot of information. It was a boot camp bucket list challenge, but only 2 people signed up because I'm a complete unknown, and it's very disheartening, that kind of thing. But I put it down to just it being a test. So I've had to go back to the basic of figuring out how to get visibility so people, and I'm writing a blog at the moment, the chicken and the egg business theory. What comes first, the chicken or the egg?
And the good thing, you know, and I can empathize with you, because this is a marathon. We have to continue to be who we are day in and day out, with the expectation that when we continue to do it with excellence, and Johan, I see you nodding your head, because this is what you're doing with 𝗏𝗏𝗏, right? It's you know, you could say the numbers today are great, and in some ways they are, but where you want to go, it's very small. So just keep doing that. And the great thing, what I would suggest, Sophie, is every time you do something, and you know, James is doing that today with this this talk, is it's being recorded, right? So if you have a YouTube channel, and make sure your YouTube channel, you know, says what it's supposed to say, right? Everything communicates, right? And I spent a lot of time this past year refining my YouTube channel and getting it to represent my brand the way I want to. Then it's all stored there and you can use it. And now one of the things I'm doing is I'm taking my webinars and I'm dissecting them into snippets so that I can actually give little pieces of information, right? Because we're all in this, you know, need to know consumer, only have a few minutes maximum to dedicate to something. So now I want to give it to my audience in the size that they want to receive it in, not in the size that I want to deliver it in. And so these are the kinds of things that you just kind of build one at a time, you know, methodically, and don't get discouraged. Keep going. You know, your excellent work. So if they don't see it now, maybe, you know, with the ability to record it, you can show them later.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Actually, one great thing is Sophie is the next guest.
Oh, fabulous.
Aren't you, Sophie?
I am, yes. I'm looking forward to it and sharing what I have.
Yeah, Martin had to shoot because he had some technical issues there and some background stuff going on. So anyway,
I think that's really great, and I just want to add just a little bit here also then that this is the type of audience and the type of feeling that a lot of the people, I would say almost 100% of the people inside of 𝗏𝗏𝗏 has, right? We're all starting entrepreneurs, and we're all looking to be less overwhelmed by surrounding ourselves with trusted people who we can find collaboration and little pieces of support so that we all can become a little bit better than what we are today. And we, as Pete said, we don't have enough time or not enough expertise in doing everything ourselves. So we have to have the right people around us, and that's what we're doing here.
Exactly.
And
that's why.
Yeah, I've been to Pete's, you're up to number 8 of your webinar now.
Next week.
And I've been to 6 of the previous 7, and I'm going to be there next week. So that's an excellent one. And I can really, really highly recommend those. They are really, truly awesome. And you should post them, of course, also in 𝗏𝗏𝗏, so that when people go into your profile there, it should be easily findable there too. And I bet you, all of you, you should go in and have a look at those. And they are one of the most brilliant presentations that I've been to. And I've been to more than 200 through 𝗏𝗏𝗏, right? So it's a very,
Thank
very
you,
good
Johan.
thing.
And we'll do that. We'll post them. You know, I'm still learning about 𝗏𝗏𝗏, and we're getting more productive all the time. But I do appreciate your constant encouragement and coaching, because that's going to make us better, and we want to help everyone. So
and we're going to come back also to your lasso model that you mentioned there in the beginning, and I'm sure that we can find a lot of further opportunities of creating success stories also for the Brand Alive brand, by helping a lot of other entrepreneurs to get to a completely different level. And of course, 𝗏𝗏𝗏, as you said, we're at the early stage of developing here, and with your assistance and with many of the other people in here, I think we will all be able to do so much better than us sitting by ourselves and feeling overwhelmed in our little cupboard, right? So
exactly. So on that, we're just going to kind of wrap up now. So Yeah, Sophie will be the next guest, so there isn't any for the next 2 weeks, so I haven't put anything out. So the next one will be Sophie's on the 7th of September. I'm on holiday, that's why I'm not doing it. A lot of people are away, so it doesn't make any sense. We're not going to try and force something in. So for the next 2 weeks, there won't be anything. The value that we get from these just the networking alone. I mean, just to listen to someone else's story and to be able to connect with them, even if you just sit and listen and learn something, is invaluable. So that's why we do it. We also want to create visibility. So once you're on here and you become a regular, I mean, I never knew anyone here. And then from regularly doing it, you get to know a lot of people's business, their personalities, and it's so much more fun. You can start helping connect people as well. And yeah, and it could lead to new opportunities, either partnerships as we've seen, or doing further business. There's many people I still need to catch up with, and I keep apologizing to Paul, but I still haven't set anything up with him, so I need to do that. And Sophie, you will get some visibility as soon as you're on as well, so that's definitely going to help your cause, and then also following some of the stuff that Pete's doing. So Pete, because it's your event, I want you to, or you're the guest, shall I ask if you've got any closing words or anything that you want to say before we kind of disappear?
Sure. Thank you so much. I would say that I think my role in life is to be an encourager. I believe that we are all capable of greatness. I would say don't get discouraged. Continue to pursue your dream. I want to be involved in any way possible. I truly get pleasure and fulfillment out of helping. So it may just be a 15-minute conversation, or you may actually need something more than that. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I will put those webinars on the Aetna site. We'll also put the lasso model, which is free, on the site, so you can test it out and see. And then just let's keep the conversation going. And James, I just want to say thank you. I think this is a fabulous program that you've created, and I look forward to collaborating. We're going to do some fun things together, and what a cool group we have. And Johan, my thanks to you for inviting me, and I will be inviting others.
Excellent. So on that note, I wish everyone a fantastic weekend, a great holiday for those going on holiday, and great success in everyone's business. And don't forget, we're all here to help one another. So if you're not sure about how Entnest works, reach out to Johan. He does also a Q&A every week. And yeah, feel free to network. If you can't find someone, let us know. Also, just keep up the good work. And we look forward to seeing Sophie, which I'll start advertising. So Sophie, I'll set up a call with you near at the time, and then we'll just sync up. And I want to hear Sophie's story next. So on that note, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Have a great holiday, James.
Yeah,
take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Right. Walter, do you want to stay on?